Well, good morning or afternoon, everybody, depending on where you are. Really appreciate you taking the time to be here with us this morning. So the topic of our webinar today is how to use CRM to improve your business. And we're going to talk about a few core categories here: sales, efficiency, and operations. But really what I want to focus on, this morning, this afternoon, is how to really take advantage of what Salesforce has to offer to really help your business streamline and become more efficient here. There are a lot of tools and a lot of capabilities there, but there are a few key things that you can do immediately that can really have a significant impact on your marketing, your sales, your operations, and just overall your customer experience with Salesforce. My name is Noel Datko. I am the senior manager here at Eide Bailly and responsible for our Salesforce consulting practice. I have been working in the Salesforce ecosystem for about 14 years now, and overall my responsibilities here for Eide Bailly include just making sure that our customers have a fantastic experience in the Salesforce ecosystem, as well as any of the integrated environments that we're working with there. My background is in organizational performance and change, as well as information systems. So I'm pretty passionate about helping organizations improve their performance through technology. So to get started here, what are some of the benefits of using a CRM, in this case, in particular, Salesforce, but using really any CRM type of functionality here in times of uncertainty? More than ever, it's really critical to have a fantastic customer experience right now. There's a lot of ways to go out there and find buyers in this market or any market here. But one of the things that we know for sure is that continuing engagements with people who know you, who love you, who trust what you do, is one of the most surefire ways to have business success within your organization. And as things become more and more digital, and we're starting to collect just gobs of information all over the place, it's becoming more and more the norm that we deliver these amazing customer experiences, that we really perceive what it is that our customers want before that maybe even they know that they want it, that we're able to resolve concerns and objections and issues in an extremely timely manner, that they can be able to interact with us in ways that don't require humans to participate in that. The Amazon experience is a fantastic example of these things, where ultimately they kind of consider that if you have to reach out to us and call us, we've missed something. We haven't optimized our processes as far as we need to. But one of the key things here, I think, looking at these charts, right, what can we use CRM to do in enhancing our customer experience, is that 73% of our customers say that one extraordinary experience raises their expectations of other companies. So the value that your competitors are providing, the value that you are providing, the value of experiences that our customers are having in industries completely unrelated to what we're doing, is really having an impact on the perception of what it is that you're delivering there. And there's a large group of people out there who are willing to pay for a much better experience, particularly with business buyers. They're looking for the value of simplicity, of really good guidance and suggestions. They want to get things done quickly, and so really understanding our customers is critically important here, and CRM is one of those ways to get to that point. Now, one of the other key areas that Salesforce in particular is very strong at is helping you understand how to best drive your sales organization. A lot of people focus and spend a lot of time in their marketing environment with some of the lowest performing channels that we can work with. So, events, buying lead lists, marketing and advertising, these types of things, right? They're effective to a degree, but they're not near as effective as word of mouth and some of the other optimizations that you could do for like search engine optimization, websites, that human touch still, right? Those things start to have a significant impact in what you're doing, but there's really no way to optimize those things without tracking the details, without going through that data and understanding, not only the hypotheses that you guys are putting out there and working towards, but then what's the ultimate performance there. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. And then just in general, can we have a platform that allows us to automate our experiences and the environment that we're working with? There's a lot of powerful tools out there that allow us to handle high volumes of interactions and data and things like that. But we've got to tie both the human element as well as the digital environment together. And automations are one of those ways that we can work through, whether it's some sort of robotic process automation, whether it's simple workflows, or in Salesforce they're called process builders and flows, things that we can do to really keep us moving and staying on our toes there. So as we think about what CRM can do for us, is really it comes down to this idea of a 360-degree view of our customer. Can we see what our customers are doing? Can we measure the performance of what our expectations have put out there, our assumptions, our hypotheses against reality and what's being achieved there? And most importantly, can we take those observations and apply learnings? One of the things that I'm very passionate about here, especially when it comes to technology and data, is these are fantastic tools, but we have to teach them, we have to work with them, we have to show them, how to really be successful. And we also have to take that information back to the human element of things and learn and apply those learnings and work through those things. And so in this case, one of the biggest values that Salesforce can give us is this learning experience, understanding our customers better, even when we fail. And in many cases, a failure, a bad experience, or something that just didn't go quite as well as we expected can be just as valuable or even more valuable than if we're just kind of floating along and things are going well. It allows us to really differentiate ourselves and develop a competitive advantage for within our market, for our clients, and make that experience incredibly important there. So, going back to that, right, if you're learning, right, and 66% of customers say, hey, we're willing to pay more for a great experience, are you capitalizing on the value that you're providing within the marketplace and within your customer base? So having that visibility, having that understanding of your customers and where you're going can really help you optimize your overall results. How do we enhance our business operations? We're going to cover a couple of simple things and a couple of not so simple things that you can use to improve your business today. We will cover, a little bit more in depth on sales and marketing performance, process design in order to streamline your business, and finally, how we can leverage integrations in more complex environments to really maximize your business efficiencies here. So we will start with improving really sales performance, and I lumped sales and marketing here together because they're so interrelated. One of my favorite quotes, and there's a couple of these in here, is this idea that when performance is measured, performance improves. And when performance is measured and reported back, the rate of improvement accelerates. So this idea of accountability becomes incredibly important when we're working in CRM systems and other environments. Now, that idea of accountability in many sales organizations is a bit threatening, right? Are we going to use the accountability stick that we have and the data that's now available to us through Salesforce to just beat up our team and really make this, you know, almost a toxic workplace to be involved in. Are we going to go and force our sales team members to do things in a way that they haven't done? And so a lot of organizations where, you know, you've been around, you know, like Eide Bailly for, you know, over 100 years or for a long time, you have sales representatives who, you know, they have a way of doing things. They may not be quite as comfortable with technology. They may not be, you know, as savvy with various things, but they're very good salespeople. You know, how are we going to incorporate that group as well as new and upcoming salespeople together and make this a fantastic environment for everybody? The objective here of CRM and the sales accountability and the accountability overall is, like I said before, learning. Can we learn? Can we improve? Can we get better? Can we create a collaborative and productive environment for our team to really thrive and flourish with what they're doing and be supportive there? And Salesforce in particular really helps us achieve those types of environments. And you know, as we look at ways to do that, the very first thing here is making sure that you're clear with what that common language and common process is within that sales environment. And Salesforce has a tool called Path, or in this particular case, it's a sales path that allows us to provide guidance and help set expectations along the way. What's really important here are some of the labels that we give things. So the sales stages that we progress through. I spent a lot of time with an organization called Griffin Hill, and it's a sales consulting and coaching organization. And you know, they really honed in on being very clear about, you know, routines and plays that need to be executed throughout the sales process. Those routines and plays gave this common process, this common language, this framework to push against. So that when we sit down and we talk about what's going on in that sales environment, we can actually have productive conversations about, hey, what went well, what went poorly, how can we improve, how can we strategize to, you know, help get this deal in the door in a more structured, procedurally driven environment. And what this really allows us to do is to do things like reading between the lines. And what I mean by that is I see a lot of instances of implementations of Salesforce where on the opportunity in particular, we have, in some cases, you know, hundreds of fields that need to be completed or filled out or addressed in some form or fashion. And in a lot of cases, a lot of that data is just not getting populated. Or it's not providing really any value to anybody within the organization. It's just busy work that's happening there. And so if we can really simplify that process, streamline the discussions that are being had there, and make sure that that has meaning to everybody in the same way and in the same consistency here, we can start to actually get measurements on what I would consider the right things that help us improve our performance. And some of those measurements start with marketing. You know, if you have a marketing organization and you're spending money on trade shows or Google AdWords or any other sort of print or digital advertising type environment, right? Your key goal here is to drive, you know, ideally leads, something that has value, somebody that you can talk to, some sort of conversion within the system. You know, having a list of people who've kind of sort of raised their hand is not enough. We need a good definition of around what is a marketing qualified lead, an MQL. And the sales team has to agree that an MQL is really a qualified lead. This is somebody that I want to talk to instead of, you know, chasing phone calls nonstop. A long time ago, there was a report published by a group called Inside Sales, where basically they said, hey, if you can't get to a lead and respond to them within, you know, 5 minutes or less, or while they're still on your website or whatnot, it's going to take you somewhere between 7 and 14 follow-up phone calls to get back in contact with that person. And so, you know, what is it that defines a lead? in terms of, interest, qualifications, timeliness, right? And you've got to really sit down as an organization and make sure that that's clear and that's part of your common language and process. Going on from that part, how do I measure marketing performance? Leads, I have a cost per lead, right? That's what it costs me to get a lead in the door. But really, I want to know as early as possible, what's the total future value that these leads might provide us? And as I start measuring conversion ratios from, various points in that common process, I can start to determine that, hey, my average close ratio is 10% for this particular environment, and my average value of deals that will be closed is $100,000, right? Now I can start to make return on investment predictions before those things actually happen and make better decisions around the amount of marketing dollars that I'm spending and where. I can also start to break down, the overall performance of sales individuals as I'm looking at that and start to say, hey, Joe really does a good job discovering and going through the needs analysis phase of the deal, but we really start to see a drop off in solution presentation or negotiation. Can I start to use that information to team him up with Kelly, who has a fantastic close ratio, maybe doesn't have quite as many deals, but can we start to get some of those skill sets tied together? Can we start to do coaching events and other things with those sales teams? And as you start to track those ratios and values and durations within the sales process, you can start to make better decisions around what's happening there and make changes to those processes in your accountability structure to improve those. Before I engaged with Bailey, I was working for a third-party logistics company, and we did these types of things in our organization. And when we were able to take a sales cycle that lasted for roughly 18 months and shorten that down to 6 months or less, and we were able to take our deal sizes and increase them substantially by implementing these types of processes and really tracking and making good hypothesis, holding each other accountable, and focusing in again on that learning so that we could provide value back to the organization. So again, one of my heroes here, another favorite quote, Edwards Deming. He says, if you can't describe what you're doing as a process, you don't know what you're doing. And I think that this is so critical. If you guys are in professional services, hopefully you're familiar with the SPI that goes through and talks about what levels of maturity we can achieve as professional services organizations. And if we're not defining things as a clearly repeatable, definable process that has consistent inputs and outputs and expectations, we're really in a heroic environment. We're incredibly dependent and at risk of some amazing individuals within our organizations that really just keep things together. And if we lose those individuals, does that experience, that fantastic customer environment that they provide, go away? And so being very clear here with the processes that you're putting in place, the handoffs, especially between those silos, are incredibly important, because you can have a really good marketing team, you can have a phenomenal sales team, and if for whatever reason we get them through that sales process and we've set really good expectations and we've done a really good job getting a deal in the door and closing the deal, but then our fulfillment team forgets or misses the handoff, or one of those experiences where you're talking to a salesperson and you give them all this information, and then you walk into an environment and with that handoff, and that person asks you all the same questions again, right? That's not a great customer experience. So how can we leverage CRM to do this for us? Salesforce in particular can do all of these things. We can automate and streamline each of these handoffs in each of these environments in the process, all the way back to that sales and marketing environment. So going back to that first slide that I shared, existing clients are going to provide us the highest conversion ratio and add more value to our business with less cost if we can continue to support them and provide that fantastic experience. So spending the time outside of CRM to be very clear with what those processes are and what the experience is that you're trying to drive is absolutely essential in having a good CRM implementation. And this is where somebody like Bailey comes in, where we're going to help you understand and really focus in on business process optimization first. But our job as Salesforce consultants is to really help you translate your vision of a process and overall organizational performance to a technical environment. And now that may mean that you need to massage your process a little bit to match up with what's available out of the box in whatever CRM tool that you're using. Transform and translate those processes into something meaningful, because for a number of reasons, you're going to be able to go a lot further within that ecosystem, especially with Salesforce, if you're understanding those principles and applying those things. Salesforce has spent a lot of time, a lot of investment, as well as other organizations that are out there that provide similar softwares on, how do I streamline this? How do I make these things a fantastic experience for our customers? And so, really keep this in mind. In order to apply an automation, you've got to be able to describe it as a process. Write it down, use Lucidchart, use Visio, use pen and paper on a whiteboard, whatever it might be, but be very clear with the inputs and the outputs of each process, who's responsible for what and when. The process that we like to leverage here is writing what are called user stories. They're very simple descriptions of something that says, as whatever role or person I might be in this organization, I want to be able to perform some function in order to produce some sort of output. And simple descriptions like that allow us to really start to identify what are those processes, how are we going to implement them in our technology systems, and apply them in our daily lives. And if you can define those things, you're going to be head and shoulders above some of these heroic organizations where they're just relying on really intelligent, really smart people to get those things done, which is going to produce inconsistency as they try and scale. And sometimes you have those not so good days, and that starts to translate to your customer experience there. We can help minimize that to a large degree with efficiently streamlined automations and processes inside of a CRM environment. All right, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this slide, but Salesforce and other environments, Bailey represents Salesforce, Boomi, NetSuite, Sage, right? Microsoft's systems, other environments like that. These environments provide us with a robust API, a robust backend for connecting various environments together. And so when you're looking at a really robust CRM like Salesforce and a really robust ERP environment like NetSuite, how do you get those two systems to talk together? And in many cases, we recommend using an implementation platform like Dell Boomi, or MuleSoft, or Informatica, or Jitterbit. There's all sorts of environments out there, but we're pretty partial to Boomi. And using that type of environment to connect things together. Now, the reason that we would do this instead of using direct API connections between those two environments is it gives us a lot more flexibility. It allows administrators instead of developers to manage and maintain some of these things in the future. And it also allows us to start tying together more systems. So if you wanted to implement Tableau or Power BI or a homegrown on-premise type environment, we can start to use that implementation platform to build a much larger data management strategy across all of our systems here. That data environment allows us to make better decisions. This quote from Jack Welch, I think, really describes this. An organization's ability to learn and translate that learning into action rapidly is the ultimate competitive advantage. So, right now we're in times of great volatility, great uncertainty. We've got to be able to adapt very quickly to what's happening here. And having a lot of disjointed systems and not being able to have that 360-degree view of our customers, and not being able to anticipate or go out and see, hey, where can I double down on activities or eliminate other things that are less productive without being incredibly disruptive to my business, becomes really, really important here. And so, what you see here just on the bottom of the screen is a simple representation of taking a lot of data in what ultimately becomes a very complex process. Let's say we're doing subscription management, selling into an environment where I'm selling subscriptions, hardware, and professional services, and I'm doing complex order and invoice management. I can do all of those things and automate those processes inside of Salesforce CPQ, and then integrate them to my ERP and my accounting environment using a tool like MuleSoft or Boomi or whatever it might be. But now, right, my revenue collection, my invoicing in a very complex environment becomes much, much easier and automated. Not only that, I have much more visibility into things like upsell, cross-sell opportunities, co-termination of any deals that might be happening, in the process, right? So if I want to add licenses or additional services or whatever it might be mid-contract, I can keep those all tied together and have appropriate conversations with my clients on a consistent basis, right? That's predictable, that is, something that we've set an expectation with them for, and drives that customer experience, right? There's probably nothing more frustrating than, billing mistakes or errors in invoicing or misfulfilled orders, things like that. And so tying these environments together really helps, one of those handoffs in those silos helps you understand those types of things. And this is kind of a representation of one of the more complex processes that you can work through, but you can also do, other more simple environments within Salesforce alone or across multiple other ecosystems and environments that exist out there. So with that said, where should you start? Let's say you're new to CRM, or you've been using it for a while, but you're finding adoption challenging, and it's basically in a very expensive Rolodex. What should we do? And so we're going to recap a little bit about what we've already talked about. We'll take a bit of a deeper dive into a couple of areas, and I'll do a quick demo of some things that I think you could do very quickly right now to help you get there, and then leave it open for some questions on some of the more complex things later. But marketing, first thing you should do here is make sure that you're measuring the total leads and their sources that they're coming from, but don't overcomplicate it. Enable campaign attribution and leverage that within Salesforce. So I'll give a quick demo of that here in just a few minutes. But really just make sure in your marketing environment, you can see where your leads are coming from. Are they coming from a trade show? Are they coming from AdWords or some other source of online advertising? Are you buying lists? Are you conducting other independent events? Things like that. Make sure that we're tracking those basic lead sources both at the lead level as well as at the opportunity level, and then use a tool called campaign attribution to get a few more details. And I see a lot of people struggle with this concept and try and overcomplicate it at first. Keep it simple. You can glean a lot of really good details from what's available in Salesforce by doing simple things and then iterating on that as you go. Salesforce is a very scalable environment, and it allows you to grow to an enterprise organization with the same tool if that's where you're starting from. The next thing, you've heard me talk about this, establishing a sales path, that common language, enforcing it, making sure that we're sticking to it. There's an adage that says, if it doesn't exist in Salesforce, it doesn't exist. And so you can't learn, you can't see, you can't measure things if they don't exist in the system as data. So don't overcomplicate it. There's a concept of friction whenever you're dealing with something. So if you can turn your mind to the last time you had to fill out some sort of form online, if the form has 50 fields in it, what's the likelihood that you're going to complete that form? Pretty low. If it has 2 fields in it, right, then that's probably going to be much easier for you to fill out. You're probably more likely to complete that form. But if that form field has 2 fields and it's your name and your social security number, I may not want to give that out. And so I've increased the friction even on a small number of fields here. So the Salesforce is the same way, right? As you're asking for information, make sure that there's incredible value. Make sure that it's value that is accessible at that time and appropriate. So if you're asking for things that the sales team may or may not know, or you're asking for too many things at any given time, people may just skip filling out that information and switch to a spreadsheet or some other source of information that's now unstructured and unreportable, and not worth your time. So make sure that you're keeping that path straightforward, consistent with what's appropriate for your business in terms of both the type of data that you're collecting and the quantity. And then, the next thing here is rely on that. I'll demonstrate both path and collaborative forecasting for you guys here in just a minute, but collaborative forecasting is a fantastic tool for salespeople, sales managers, and executives to sit down and say, hey, how are we doing? We get a consistent set of data, it has consistent meaning, and we can start to have those conversations, and we can massage those numbers. We can do lots of things and drill into a lot of detail without having to ask for the sales team to sit down and build a big spreadsheet for multiple hours out of the week, and they can focus on selling and just updating some basic data. The other thing here, we've talked about integrations in number 4, but we haven't spent a lot of time talking about support and that type of environment, but this is where you can use cases in Salesforce. You could do an automation that says, hey, I'm going to win an opportunity, and I'm immediately going to create a case and assign it to a fulfillment person, an account manager, whoever that might be, to make sure that I can track the handoff, that they're aware, that they're getting an alert, and that they're progressing through that type of environment. It would look very similar to something that's in the sales path, and so we'll take a look at that here in just a moment. Finally, reporting in Salesforce. This is a very, very powerful tool, and it's extremely easy to use. There are reports, there are dashboards. We get lots of really nice graphics and things that we can deal with here. And so in this case, right, as I'm breaking out the various functions and the capabilities that are going on within the organization, I can create dashboards tailored to each of those individuals. And so, right, some of the things that Salesforce has put out there, and this comes directly from a Salesforce blog, right, 6 dashboards that management needs here, right? What do I want to see? I want to see my lead funnel dashboard. How are things coming in from the marketing team, and how are those leads progressing to that sales handoff, and can I start to predict the return on investment and value based on that? How am I stacking up against competition and externally and internally, right? My tracking details there, my forecast dashboard report, my KPIs for various other pieces of functionality, marketing, sales, service, support, whatever those things might be, right? What are my KPIs, and can I see those quickly and consume that information in a matter of seconds instead of having to dig through piles of data? Individual team dashboards and your sales executive dashboards, right? Being able to see these things at a glance is really, really critical. Okay, so I am going to do a quick demo of 5 things in Salesforce that we've covered here at this point. Okay, so 5 things that we're going to look at. Campaigns and campaign influence, sales path, a simple custom report that shows opportunities by lead source and some things there. The forecast module and a company performance dashboards. Some of these are the simple things that you could do immediately right now. But the first thing that you're seeing here, if you've got an out-of-the-box instance of Salesforce, you can get a lot of value out of what's going on here with the basic assistant, key deals, tasks, and follow-up, just to keep you organized. It's a great environment, and it can also help you understand, hey, how am I doing from a, a sales perspective for sales teams. But we'll start with the campaigns concept. And campaigns can get quite complex, but you don't need to make them really any more complex than this to start. So I've created a simple campaign just to track Google AdWords in this case. And what I'm doing is I've added campaign members. So the way that campaigns work is I have a campaign that's kind of the placeholder for everything that's going on in this campaign. And then I have the members. And a lot of people maybe struggle with this. It's at the beginning. Because a lot of times we think about, hey, I want to market to a company. I want to get engaged with this organization, and that's great. But when you really think about marketing and the campaigns and things that are happening here, it's really at the individual, at the person level. And so, if I'm trying to, do business with Acme, right? Who am I targeting at Acme? Am I targeting the president? Am I targeting VPs? Am I targeting line level employees? What am I trying to accomplish with these campaigns? Who am I going after there? And I can start to build that list of people who are going to be engaged or who should be engaged in this particular environment. So as you think about campaigns, whether you're going to include leads or actual contacts, people that you're hopefully doing business, you can combine them into that same environment. One kind of quick tip here, when I look at the leads object in Salesforce, basically I consider that the suspect list, right? So if you can sit down and look at, the people that you might want to do business with, and you say, I suspect this person might want to buy my product or service, they're a lead. That's a great place to put that in there. It's a catch-all. You can add lists. You can funnel in all sorts of potentials into that group. But as soon as you talk to somebody and they become a prospect that has both interest and an ability to pay, we should be converting those into contacts and accounts and opportunities in Salesforce so that we can really start to engage in that sales process. But the idea of a campaign is made up of two parts. It is the campaign itself and the campaign members. But one of the important things that we want to start to do is, as we start to apply campaign attributions, is we want to start to tie opportunities as well to these campaigns. And by doing that, right, I've said, hey, I've got a budget of $24,000. I want to drive $2 million worth of revenue out of this, and I've spent $8,000 so far on this particular campaign. This campaign is time bound, right? It's going to go from January to December of this year. But I want to track, hey, how many leads? And if any of those leads have converted, now I can start to determine my conversion ratio. And I can start to measure total opportunity value and closed won value based on the campaigns that I'm working here. So I can now start to run reports. I can start to do calculations on these details and make better decisions. And so if I'm running a trade show campaign, I can start to compare, am I spending more money to get less value? Do I project that I'll be able to get more value out of that as things go based on the time and the duration that this campaign has been running? So I can start to track some of these stats and really start to make good decisions. When you're starting out, it's probably not helpful to start building, multiple layers of campaigns into like ad groups or individual ad, keywords and things like that. Keep it simple, right? Aggregate that information into something that you can start to build meaningfully. This takes just a few minutes to set up once you're familiar with the concept, and now you can track and report against those things. Top tips here: keep campaigns simple, but make sure that you're enabling them and make sure that you're making these assumptions, right? What am I going to spend? How much am I spending? What do I expect to get out of that? Right, and then track your progress towards that. Now, this data is not coming from the marketing team. This is opportunity data coming from the sales team. So as soon as the sales team's adding value, that there's something going on with this deal. Usually the sales guys aren't going to waste their time putting deals through that aren't worth it. And so we want to close that feedback loop, and this is one of the key ways to do that. Now, how do we keep the sales team honest in that? How do we make sure they aren't running stuff all the way through those environments for no reason? And that's where we start to get into that common language and this idea of a sales path. So I'm going to go ahead and make a couple of modifications to this. This top section here is what's called sales path. And basically what I can do, let me go ahead and mark this so we can see all the words. I can see all of my sales stages, and ideally each of these sales stages has some sort of process associated with it, or a set of expectations that drives that common language. And I can collect key bits of data as I go through each phase and contextually change that. In this case, I'm not asking for any more data, but I am giving guidance for success, some coaching details for the sales team, right? And I can come in here and say, okay, great, it needs analysis. I've still got that guidance for some success, but I've got a different set of data that I'm trying to get at that point. And you can tailor this to your business as you go through, whether you're putting next steps or whatever it is. So if you ascribe to any of the sales processes that are out there, right, you can build that guidance for success and the other details into this. It takes just a little bit of time to set this up, but it takes a lot more effort to make sure that we're coaching and we're training and we're defining these processes in a meaningful way. Now, there's a couple of underlying pieces of data that are driven off of these sales stages that are really important here. So I'm going to go ahead and mark this as in the proposal price quote stage, and you'll notice that this number here changed. So I've changed my stage, and I've changed my probability percentage, and it's also categorized this in the back end into a bucket for forecasting, which we'll talk about in just a second here. But in case you missed that, we'll switch back. Salesforce is automatically updating these probabilities in these buckets behind the scenes. I'm not having to ask the sales team to do that. So this is a bit of those reading between the lines environments here. Only collect the information that you absolutely need when you need it from the sales team, because having too many fields creates friction. And then make sure that your process is robust enough to where that language is consistent, and we can say, hey, proposal price quote means there's a 75% chance that this is going to get through, and we're going to go ahead and commit this deal to the month within which that we've set that close date, something like that. Again, I'm tracking my lead source, right, at a high level on the opportunity. And the reason that I'm doing that is because as a marketer, I want to get a better understanding of how each of my lead sources perform over time and with what's happening. So here's a fairly simple report that shows my opportunities by lead source. And in this case, it's showing that the opposite effect is happening in this organization, that my ads, for whatever reason, are driving a lot more value and at a higher close rate than my word of mouth or my partner referrals or whatever it might be. So we might want to investigate that, right? That's something that we can quickly see and say, okay, great, why is that happening? In this case, it's just because we have dummy data in the system. But one of those insights that you might want to look into there. But that helps to tie together sales and marketing and that transition, that silo handoff that's going on there. Now, from that point, we wanted to talk a little bit about our forecasts. And Salesforce has this great tool called collaborative forecasting that allows me to build a hierarchical view of my sales organization. So I can see each individual salesperson. I can roll up teams of salespeople to their managers, up to executives, and so on and so forth. And I can slice and dice that information over time. So rather than have my sales team build out a big complex report and having them update that all the time, if I simply update my opportunities, I get that common language. Hey, this is considered pipeline. So this is my first two stages in my sales process. Best case, next two. Commit, next two. Closed is closed one. All of that is handled in automation behind the scenes. And now I can come in here and I can drill in and say, hey, I want to talk about, why did we close this deal that was supposed to close in, July now? I could look at that. Or, hey, tell me about your pipeline for the month of April, right? And so I can drill into each one of these and I can get everything that falls into those buckets or the whole lot with simple clicks here. And I can make modifications in line to some of these things. And I can massage these numbers if for whatever reason I need to, and make notes and report on that up or down. And then I can also get manager views where I can, go in and drill down and see the whole team and multiple groups of things like that. And this is all out of the box. It's not incredibly hard to set up, but it all relies on defining that process up front ahead of time and being very clear with what these things mean. And that takes some effort. It takes some effort to make it consistent and to work through that. And then the last thing here that I wanted to just jump into really quickly is a company performance dashboard. This is just a collection of reports, but it's great because I can hover over things and I can get more details depending on how I set that up. I can visualize all of this information very easily. If I click on things, I can drill down to the underlying reports and get more details. And I can even, get more details by expanding that in the report. So there's a great deal of flexibility, great deal of power and accessibility through those dashboards. So spending some time to define those KPIs, and this is an out-of-the-box function. Everything here that you're seeing, this is a plain Jane vanilla, really no customization Salesforce org. I've just gone in and turned on some features here. So if you're watching this and saying, hey, I need some of these features, whether simple or advanced, obviously, I'm presenting here, I'm responsible for the Salesforce team. Eide Bailly as a firm has been around for quite a long time, over 100 years now. And, we're all across the West, but we serve clients, basically anywhere in the world. We're happy to help and help you understand not only, hey, what can I do in Salesforce? How can I, implement an ERP or an integration, complex environments, whether it's sales and service optimization or, billing and invoicing and revenue recognition and all those kind of things. We have a large team of experts here who are more than happy to help. And, in particular, if you guys know of anybody in Mississippi or Maine that needs some of our services here, I'd really like to fill in our map, but we work all across the United States and have a number of global clients here as well. Let us know if you have any questions or if you need any assistance with Salesforce. Happy to help, and feel free to reach out at any time and we'll get you taken care of.